We are back. We are back. Today we have Kristina Barlaan on. I'm excited because lately I've been seeing a lot of her videos on Instagram Reels, but as an academy owner, fellow academy owner and teacher or professor, so to speak, they ring true. So Kristina, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been training how long now?
Let me do the math in my head. I'm so bad. I started in October 2007, and so we're 2022 now. So it was
so like 15 years?
Yeah, almost 15 years. And it'll be 15 years in October. I'm hitting my black belt anniversary this in June. So
oh, wow.
And I'll be a black belt for 7 years. So that's kind of cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's, so, and then go through that a little bit. Where did you start? How did you get into it? How did you, start competing, all of that?
So originally started off with Muay Thai in 2006. Oh my God. Yes. In 2006. And it was at Cesar Gracie's Academy, and it was actually his HQ in Pleasant Hill, California. Okay. I didn't know anything about Jiu Jitsu at the time. It kind of just randomly walked in, actually, because I was more like, again, I was just interested in Muay Thai. I didn't know what Jiu Jitsu was. Randomly walked in, got information. The long story short is I had to somehow convince my mom that I need self-defense lessons. I really didn't need, I did, but didn't. Like my whole objective was that I wanted to fight people. And not because, I wasn't an angry, violent child, but like I was a very physical, aggressive person who've always wanted to do martial arts. So, but yeah, I didn't pick up jiu-jitsu for like another year after doing like Muay Thai. And I actually didn't even sign up to do jiu-jitsu until my current professor now, Kaio Teha, when he got brought in as the head instructor over at Caesars, that's when I signed up. Because before then, I would hop in the class maybe now and then because my priority was still Muay Thai and getting ready for my amateurs. But when he came in and like I saw his style of jiu-jitsu and how he taught, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I'm one of Kaio's very first students when he first came to the US. I got my blue belt under him and Cesar Gracie right before I moved to Arizona. And then I was under Gustavo Dantas when I was there. When I moved back to California in 2013, it was like, okay, I can drive maybe 5-10 minutes and train over at Caesars, but he's not the instructor there. I don't know who's teaching there. And it's close for convenience, or I can drive an hour and train under Professor Kaio. And it was like, it's night and day, like it was a no-brainer. I had to go with Professor Kaio because it's like, he's the person that really like got me to believe in jiu-jitsu and like, ignited the fire. He was was encouraging me to compete right off the bat. Like I didn't even have that much experience. I didn't even know how to do takedowns. My first tournament, and he was like, "Yeah, you can go in. You can compete. You'll be fine. Like, just go. Like, you're gonna be fine. Like, all right." And yeah, and here we are, almost 15 years later, and I'm still representing him. I'm one of his black belts, and yeah, I didn't think I would be here back then.
So what about it was what about his style of teaching, or what you first saw was like, okay, this makes sense, like this is something I want to do? What was about his style?
Well, if you've seen Kaio, I feel like that's really all you need. Again, your first impression when you see him, he doesn't talk, you say, hey, that's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he's like a medal farm. This is what Cesar told me. This is a medal farm. He wins all the medals. And I'm like, Cesar, that looks like a 14-year-old kid, Right. So first there's like the onset, like disbelief, like that guy could actually be really good at jiu-jitsu because he's like a, small, skinny kid, right? Who looks like a Abercrombie model, like with his hair and everything, like jawline and everything. I was like, dude, this guy's, he's too pretty to be a jiu-jitsu guy. Right. And then I saw him like train with these guys who are like, 200 pounds plus, right? Like there was no one anywhere close to his size. He was tiny, and he was just doing whatever he wanted with them, right? Like, and at first I thought it was a joke, like, oh, like they're messing with me, right? They're trying to like sell me that this guy can actually do jiu-jitsu. But then, when you see like the look on people's faces, like when they get submitted or they get swept or whatever. And it's like,
I mean,
Like
Kyle
right there.
was
Yeah.
like ripping up the open weight. I mean, really big weight
Yeah.
differences, like with ease, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I think like at that time he was. I mean, we're the same age. He's like 6 months older than me, so we were both 21 at the time. So so again, like he's a small guy, and then I'm seeing like him doing all this crazy amazing stuff, and I'm like, all right, that looks really cool. Then like, okay, let's do a class with him. So and then just seeing how he explained, I think he was teaching like a scissor sweep or something, super basic, super fundamental, but like just how he explained it and how he showed it, it just made sense, right? And as someone who's also really, really small, I really, really connected to that because like, well, if he can do it and if I can just follow these simple, like the way that he's breaking it down, then I can do it. And that was just the eye opener for me. Like, oh my God, this is really empowering. This is really cool. And I don't have to be big or strong. Like, cause before I was just kind of just being ragdolled. Like I'm like one of those, I'm like a chihuahua sometimes, you know, like really big heart and a lot of bark, but you know, my bite's not necessarily as, you know,
Right.
but yeah. And so, I was getting just kind of thrown around and like, man, I just wanted to roll with everybody. But now it's like, okay, learning from him, I had direction and an actual vision of like, wow, I could actually be really good at this. And I think it could be really good for me.
Do you think him being smaller like really sort of was like, hey, that was also a trigger, like just watching him and being smaller? Because I know like I'm a smaller guy, Greg's a smaller guy, and it's interesting because I've trained with a lot of people, and even some of my instructors, the ones that are smaller, it makes more sense for me, right? It makes more sense to have someone who's sort of similar in your body type.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that was really what sold it, right? Like, one, I'm seeing someone who's like my size. Two, the way he teaches is like it's 100% technique. Like there's no strength, there's no size. Like I think when I first stepped into that gym, it was, you know, you see like these big athletic guys and you're like, oh man, like these tanks, I'm never gonna be like those people. Like I'm never gonna be able to do that, right? But then seeing his teachers, like, but I can completely do that, and I could be really, really effective, and I don't need to do what these big guys are doing. I can fight the way that is meant for my body type and for my size and my attributes. And so yeah, like, and I just knew that was the kind of jiu-jitsu I wanted. Like I really wanted that technical jiu-jitsu and almost have people kind of look at me and underestimate a little bit. You know, I don't know. Part of that feels kind of nice when people can look at you and they think like, oh, that little thing, and like, you know, if I'm wrong. I know at least back then I had like a complex of wanting to prove people wrong. I don't do that now, but 21-year-old me felt like, you know, I want to prove to people I'm strong, I can do it, you know, and I can do whatever you put in front of me, and now at least I had a way of doing that without getting hurt or, you know, smashed as much.
Right. Do you find like how does your fighting change? Like say you're rolling right in class and you're fighting bigger people versus fighting people your own size, or when you're competing, do you totally use like a different technique when you're fighting?
I have to code switch a little bit. Like obviously I'm never going to roll with a white belt the same way that I roll with like a purple, brown, even a black belt, right? Like I'm going to roll very, very differently. With, you know, obviously when I'm training with other black belts or even brown belts, I can definitely, you know, take all the brakes off. Like I can just go and I don't have to worry about anything. Obviously I'm just making sure I'm not poking anybody in the eye, but I don't have to be concerned about taking care of them as far as making sure that they're comfortable. Like obviously when I'm going with my white or blue belts, it's all about, I want to give them chances. I want for them to see where they're making mistakes. I want for them to see where they can capitalize on opportunities. But I'm also like, I have this thing where I'm going to tell you about something. If you're doing something wrong in a roll, I'll point it out like, hey, don't do that because this is what will happen. And if you do it again, then I'm going to show you this is what's going to happen. Right. So I'm definitely one of those where I'm like, I'm going to reinforce like why things should be done a certain way. And then when I compete, same thing. It's kind of like, I'm not even concerned anymore. I'm just kind of like, you know, kind of really zoned in. I don't say I black out a little bit, but I definitely am very so much in the present that it's just like, okay, now this one, now this, now this, now this, you know, it's such in real time that it's really hard to kind of go back and like, oh, this is what I'm thinking and this is what I'm doing. All I know is that I'm hyper focused on that moment. When I'm training, obviously I can relax a little bit, especially if I'm not doing competition training. If I'm just free rolling or just rolling with my students, then I can have a little bit more fun. And obviously, if I'm rolling with people who are like closer to my size, same thing. If it's my size and lower belt, then I'm going to pull back. If it's my size and higher, then I know I can pick up a little bit more. But I don't go hard right off the bat either, too. I kind of like to feel things out. Usually I can tell by someone's grip or the way that they put pressure, that initial grip or that initial pressure, I can kind of feel how the roll is going to go. And then I like to set the pace after that. So if they're not initiating or they're being timid, then I might try to like, hey, let's go, right? Like I might give them stuff to react to. If they are trying to bully forward a little bit more, I'm definitely gonna be using a lot more frames. If I'm going with someone who's bigger, I'm not gonna let them stay directly in front of me where they can, angle off and put lots of pressure. So I'm always trying to find like where they can't put their weight onto me, or trying to find ways where I don't have to be on bottom for too long. So definitely I'm always assessing like who I'm going with and what they have to offer, or what they're trying to get out of the role, and I'm trying to make it as productive as possible for them and for myself. But nowadays it's more about the students than it is for myself anyways. So
oh man, you're hitting on some awesome points, because I think people don't even realize that much thought goes into who you're training with, what level they are at. I mean, it takes a skillful jiu-jitsu practitioner to be able to roll with somebody new, roll with a white belt who is using way too much strength, roll with different people up the ranks. I mean, that's a whole different world in itself.
Yeah, and I'm always, I feel like as instructors, especially for head instructors or co-head instructors, business owners, right? When we're rolling with our students, like there's a very fine line between challenging and then also discouraging. So it's like we have to kind of like ride that line, like how much can I push them so that that they have a proper challenge, right? They're not thinking that it's like, kind of like fairy tales, like, oh, I can do whatever I want, like, oh, I got this on professor. But at the same time, you still want to encourage them, right? So we want to have, there has to be some reality to it, right? Like, Professor Kaya says all the time, like you have to have real jiu-jitsu. You can't do make believe, right? Professor Kaya's really known for like, sometimes he like has like really funny jokes, or like really like where is he going with this joke, right? And one when we were training in particular was one of my teammates, he's a black belt now, but at the time he was a blue belt, Benji, and he's like, hey professor, what do you think about this move, right? And then he like shows this technique that he's been working on, and then Kyle looks at him and goes, Benji, so you believe in Santa Claus? Like no. Like about the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny? No. So why are you doing these fairy tale moves? Like, and like, so like obviously I personally can't do that with my students, or I was like, I'll say can. It's like it's not in my nature, but I am going to refer like, hey, that might not work because of this, right? Or like,
right.
Hey,
Yeah.
is the person letting you do that? Or like that might work if they're letting you do it. So I don't know. It's a fine line of like being encouraging at the same time, not smashing their dreams completely. When you train with them, when you roll with them, or even when they ask you questions like, "Hey, what do you think about this technique?" Or we want
that's a lot nicer, right? I mean, Brian, coming up, I'd show like a YouTube clip or show somebody YouTube like, "What the fuck is that shit? Get it out of here!"
Yeah, well, and it's funny too, because like even training with like high level people, sometimes they're like, hey, let me do this, and you're like, dude, like I know you watch this on Instagram or something, but that is never going to work. Like you're like, no, that setup's horrible. Like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna toe hold you while you're doing that, or like there's just no, it's funny because it is it is a balance, even with people you train with that are even high levels, not even just beginners. Sometimes you're like, yeah, dude, no, not gonna happen.
Kyle comes up with like some really, really creative stuff, and most of the time I'll be like, that would never work until he does it, and then he does it, and you're just like, I can't ever say anything. I can't ever say, Professor, that's not going to work. You're crazy, because every single time you say that, he makes it work. So he's a wizard. But I'm going to say that he's definitely like the 1% of people who are like that, who literally whatever that they want to do, they can do. For us peons and mere mortals, we could just a dream and it'll just stay on Instagram. Like, maybe we could try this, you know?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of like really cool stuff lately with Mason Fowler, like putting some really cool videos up, and like it's experimental, but at the same time they're going live. They're not doing this.
Yeah.
They're not doing this in slow motion. That's when you can tell. You know what I mean? So
if you catch it,
Well,
that's
working
also
on it.
yeah.
Well, that's also one of the things. Like when you create, right? Because it is an art. You know, we're creating stuff all the time, but pulling it off live is really like in a live role is so important.
Yeah, whenever they're creating content together, it's like they go through it a few times, but like one of the things that it's always mentioned that, you know, Kyle is always gonna say is like, this has to be real. Like it has to be realistic. If you just let me do it, no one's gonna believe that this will work. So like you have to like fight me, or like, you know, like you have to like for real, like react for real. And so sometimes too, it's just kind of like the way that, you know, high level black belts think is just like another level. But you know, there's levels to this thing, you know, and there's just ways like, oh, sometimes I would roll with him and he'd be like, well, why would you do that? And I'm like, this just seemed like the best option for me because I'm screwed, right? You know, you have my arm here, you got my lapel here. Like this seemed like the best option. He's like, no, you would do this. And I'm like, I would never do that. It's like, it's like, but you should, because if you don't, then this is going to happen. And it's like, I can't say, well, you're wrong. I just have to listen. And, you know, like, but he's, you know, when some people are like 1 step ahead, 3 steps ahead, he's like, he's far into next week, you know, he's like, when you think you've like figured something out, it's like, nope, I know nothing. And, you know, this is already black belt to black belt. So imagine how that is like for us having to teach that to, again, like white and blue belts who are just starting out, or like, you know, who are new to it, and they have to tap into like that thinking, or that process of thinking. And you know, because that is a skill. It is a skill to learn how to process information, not just take what you're seeing and then just do it. You actually have to like know when to apply it. Like, is this the appropriate time, you know? Because that's it's really hard to teach that and to learn it too.
What belt level were you when you first started coaching and teaching?
Let's see. I started, I'd say, teaching with the kids, obviously as a blue belt, you know, I'm a fellow blue belt guy. Like, hey, you're a blue belt, you're gonna help start teaching the kids class. Like, okay, right. And it started off with like the little kids, like the little toddlers. But I'd say I really started getting more into it as at purple belt is like when I think people started taking me a little bit more seriously when it came to coaching. Like I wasn't just a blue belt who was like really excited to be there, and you know, definitely had a little bit more energy. Which is also funny to say is that at purple belt was the belt also that I almost considered quitting competition too, because of like just like I had so much unchecked like mental blocks when it came to competing that I was in denial about. So yeah, like I feel like that was like a good, like, I guess like I don't know, it's catharsis. I don't know what's the right word for that, but it was like a good like process of like, wow, this is me as a competitor and me as a coach. And a lot of like how I saw myself being good as a coach came off of me being able to be good as a competitor. And then
Gotcha.
It was pretty toxic, right? In my head, I'm like, well, then I should probably just not compete, because if I don't compete, then I could just be a coach and no one's going to have expectations, right? So, but purple belt is definitely when it started. I had my women's classes. I was able to like, you know, award stripes and oversee promotions. I never got to like do the actual promotions myself, but I got to at least give my 2 cents on them. And so that was really cool too, as being like, wow, my opinion is actually being considered when it comes to the students that I work with, even though like I'm not the head professor.
Yeah, that's a big point. I mean, I don't. Some schools don't really do that. It's only the head professor, doesn't really allow any other of the coaches to have input or things like that. I really think it's, you know, the game is changing lately, and we were talking about it before, but the whole perspective of, you know, when you're teaching, whether you own an academy or not, just the fact that you're teaching, there's a lot more that goes into it than people think. I mean, you're not really thinking about your own training, and you really can't, especially if you're a one man show running an academy and teaching like myself. It's very tough. I put my own training to the side a lot of the times because I'm focusing on running the business, running the academy, making sure everybody has a good experience, rolling with different levels. Like, people don't realize, like we said before, is a huge, you know, something totally people don't talk about. But you had an interesting post, I think it was yesterday, about, like, you know, people didn't show up to an open mat, and then so go into that a little bit, because I think some people, when they first start teaching, like I've experienced this, people in my academy, when they start teaching or covering classes for me, and you know, nobody showed, they take it personally. It has nothing to do with that. Go into that a little bit.
So I'm definitely one of those who, like, initially would take it personally if no one showed up. Be like, oh, maybe they just don't like me. Like, they don't like my teaching style or whatever. Like, oh man, what am I doing wrong? Like, I don't understand, right? So totally internalize that. But yeah, I think, like, people got, like, schedules sometimes, like, especially here in the area in particular that I'm in. The town I'm in is called Pace. It's a lot of, like, it's a military town. There's a lot of families. I'd say, like, this is, like, a very, very different dynamic of, like, people that I'm used to in California. Like, California, especially in, like, the Bay Area, it's like fast, bustle, traffic, everyone's rushing, and people make it a priority to make it a class, because if they don't have that hour, then, like, they're gone. They don't have anything else. And, like, people here are I think it's a little bit slower. And so, like, that, honestly, there's not as much of an urgency, I think, is the best word to train. Like, people just want to train when they can train, and if they can't, they can't. And so it's like, you kind of have to, like, learn how to slow down with that, especially, like, me coming from, like, again, hustle bustle, competition, competitor, like, lifestyle at the gym, 3 to 4 training sessions a day. They're all being at the gym all day and only caring about myself. Like, focusing on myself, to now switching over to now this position, and I have to wait for students to come in. And sometimes a morning class will have one person, maybe someone will, no one will show up, maybe two. And I feel like the days where only 1 or 2 people show up are sometimes harder than the days when more people show up, especially if, like, you have, like, a hard time, like, regulating energy, or, like, just, like, I am an introvert. I present as an extrovert, but I am very much an introvert. I get drained very easily. But knowing that I have to build up energy to teach class, and then you build up this energy, and then you're hoping that, like, when you get there, there's gonna be people there that you can also kind of, like, ride off a little bit, because you're expanding it. Now, if no one shows up, it's okay. But if 1 or 2 show up, it's like, that's almost more draining than a bigger group, because it's kind of like, now all your energy is focused on that one person, and it's incredibly awkward if you don't have a close connection, or if your communication style is different, or your energy levels are different. And if you're also me, who, on top of being introverted, also has social anxiety, it's like, there's too much time and there's too much silence for my brain to be like, oh, you're saying the wrong thing, you're messing up, you don't make sense, you're rambling, your students think you're annoying. And so sometimes it really is just a relief when no one shows up. You're like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about the energy anymore. But as much as I am relieved, part of me is also a little disappointed. Like, well, why didn't they show up? Is it me? Like, oh, he likes me. Like, oh, I know that's not true. Like, I have a lot of, like, families that train. So a lot of, parents or people with 9 to 5 jobs. Like, these are not competitors. These are, average. These are just regular people with jobs, with families. They want to train for hobby, and they'll come in when they can make it. And I really am so appreciative when they come in, because, I've had already a couple students who've already gotten, like, private lessons without having, like, hey, you're gonna get a private lesson today because you're the only one that showed up, or hey, it's just you and this guy, so you guys are gonna get a semi-private, whatever you guys want to work on. And I think that also is, like, has its own value. So even though there's, like, thoughts that tell me, oh no, like, people don't think I can teach good jiu-jitsu, and then you teach the lesson with, like, this 1 or 2 people, and then you see the progress, and you're like, oh no, like, they're appreciative. I'm good at what I do. So it's that roller coaster of having to, like, Yeah. The
Yeah,
plastic
those
stuff
people,
is real.
those people that you're giving the privates and the semi-privates to that are just showing up in the morning are gonna like be like, oh damn, when that class gets really crowded, they're gonna be like all disappointed. They're not gonna get those one-on-ones, right?
Yeah, and it's weird because it comes in ebbs and flows, right? There at a
Mhm.
certain point, like that, my morning class had like 8 to 10 people, and then some people moved away, and then
Right.
some people's schedules changed, and some people got injured, and then during the time that they were off, like some people stopped coming because that person wasn't coming. So it's like it's a whole big like
Mhm.
it's like I'll say ecosystem, but yeah, like
Yeah.
it's a whole like system of like one will affect the other, and all these parts are completely out of my control, yet somehow I feel responsible, and I don't have to be.
Mhm.
Just because I'm co-head professor does not mean I'm responsible for people's lives changing, right?
Right.
But it's still, we still, I guess, feel that responsibility because we do like, well, is there something I can do, right? Because I think that's like the hardest part too. Is like, it's really easy to say, oh, it's everybody else except for me. So I
Mm.
think it's
Yeah.
almost to the point where it's like overcompensating for too much accountability, right?
Mhm.
So I'm definitely on like the extreme end of that, but pulling back, it is good to have accountability. Like, okay, well, is there something I can do to change? I remember at some point I was asking the other co-head professor, who's actually the owner of the business. I was like, hey, like I'm noticing during this time, like this morning class with this instructor, there's lots of people coming in. And then on my morning class, there's like no one coming in. Like, what's going on? Like, am I doing something wrong? And then he's like, okay, let me ask around. And he was joking, but there's part truth, I guess. He's just like, yeah, they're saying that your warm-ups are too hard. And I'm like,
Right.
and I'm like thinking in my head, like, but I pulled them back a lot, And I was like, well, even if I pulled them back a lot, there's probably still harder than, like
What they're
whatever I
used
did
to.
in California is going to be, I'd have to
Yeah.
really change it for this area in Florida. Like, it's not the same. And so I pulled
Yeah.
back a lot. I pulled back a lot. And I was like,
Y-
hoping like, okay, maybe they'll come back now. I was like, I had to like make a promise. I promise I'm not going to kill you the Mormons anymore. I swear. I'll be nice. Please just start coming back.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And there, it may not even be that your warmers are too hard. It may just be different things you're doing even than what they're used to, because people get so set in their patterns of what they do, that it could be that you switched it up and now it's harder for them, at the beginning. But they need to learn, they'll get through it and they'll get stronger at it and, be more productive.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, at least I'm not making them do burpees. I'm not making them do like a whole bunch of like crazy like calisthenic stuff. I am doing functional warm-ups. Like,
Right.
you're like, okay, these are all movements that you're gonna use in jiu-jitsu at some point or another, and it's really good to get like that, like the motion down, right? I mean, I come from
Mhm.
a dancing background, so like every single day, like doesn't matter, like say example in ballet, you like plies, right? You bend your legs, you bend like you're gonna use that everywhere, like and so it makes sense, like okay, put that put that movement into the warm up and make that something that they do every single day, so they don't even
Yeah.
think about it, right? But in the
And
beginning, yeah, it's really really challenging because it's like, oh, you have to use your core muscles and you have to
mhm.
use like these muscles and that muscles, and you are definitely engaging things that are very very different. But my intention is that we're engaging muscles that you're going to use, and then you're going to see like very often I'll show like I'll add a warm up, or I'll add like a movement to the warm up, and then at some point in time I'll be like, hey, so just like what we do across the mat, this is where it comes into play. So I'm not going to be a jerk and just be like, okay, you can do some burpees, because no one's going to burpee in a jiu-jitsu match or in training ever, I don't think. That'd be really weird. I don't know. So if someone does
Yeah.
it, I don't know. I don't want to say never, never, right? Knowing my professor, maybe Kyle would put a burpee somewhere in there. He can do it. But yeah, like I said, I'm gonna be challenging, but I don't want to discourage anybody. But like the stuff I'm gonna give them is doable and will be used. We just gotta tap into it,
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, there's so many different dynamics. Like, you can always overanalyze what you're doing and think there's something wrong, but it comes down to the fact that that you can't please everybody. Everybody's schedules, there's
Mhm.
way more outside things that are in control, and it's you got to take that all into account. Like, even just yesterday, very slow in the classes. It was Memorial Day, holiday. I mean, you know, a lot of schools close. So, you know, it's just not, it's somebody doesn't show, or it wasn't a packed class. It's not you, it's not the instructor. Um,
Mhm.
you know, you got to just think of those dynamics of, you know, being a coach, professor, or even owner. Like there's sometimes like me being a one-man show. I remember some, you know, a past student when he made a comment that I heard about, like, oh, well, Greg's always on his phone a lot. I'm like, listen, I got to take clips on during the class when I'm doing a video of the technique, or a video of the people warming up, so I can post, and, you know, things like that. It's, you just, some things are surprising, but you never really experience it until you're coaching and you're teaching, or if you run the business. You know, certain things that come from students and their opinions that just come out of left
Mhm.
field, but you just can't, you know, you try not to take it personally, and it's part of
Yeah.
doing this, you know.
Yeah. Like I definitely relate with like the phone thing. Like I really, really do my best to be off the phone. I remember
Mm,
at one point when like as a black belt, like first starting to like navigate like instructions and being like, you know, program head or whatever. And they're like, yeah, like try to not be on your phone. Don't be on your phone as much as you can. I'm like, yeah,
mm,
okay, great, got it, heard, right? And then you go down the line, and then dynamics change. Maybe I don't have as much help on the mat, or it's just gonna be me on the mat. But then I get called in like, oh, you know, so and so's not gonna be able to make it to the office, so they won't be able to run the front. Or like, hey, I need to send you information about certain students that are gonna be coming today, but like I'm the only person there. So it's like, okay, so now I need to be on my phone, but you're also telling me not to be on my phone. So now it's like, right. And
Right.
so it's always trying to explain too, because especially the kids class. Kids class is the time the most that I'm off my phone. But sometimes I'll get messages like beforehand, be like, hey, so and so is going to come in. This student's going to come in, and it's like I have, or like these people we need to be doing, you know, stripes today. These are the list of the attendance cards, and here they are. And it's like you know, like, and I'm trying to make sure the kids
Right.
don't die,
Yeah.
and at the same
Yeah.
time trying to make sure that I can run this part, because maybe like they're held up somewhere else and they couldn't come in. So I'm, you know, trying to help out, even though that's not part of like my responsibility, but it is part of the realm of like I care about this business, even though I'm not the business owner. I want it to
Mhm.
succeed, so therefore I have to help where I can. But it's hard because it's like, you know, you don't want to be on your phone and very much want to be with the students, but sometimes you kind of have to just juggle it all, and it's very difficult.
yeah, like you run a class, and then, you know, 5 minutes into the class, there's a guy that's visiting, went to the wrong address. Like, you know, how you're not going to be able to, you know, how you going to be able to do that? So it's, I think, just there's so many dynamics. There's a new student, but maybe there's mostly advanced people in the class. Okay, you know, so I split the mat, bring them through some basics. You know, just different, so many different dynamics. You got to be able to handle that on the fly. And, you know, as a professor and coach and owner, it could drain you. It could
Yeah.
really, really drain you. I mean, you do a full day of packed kids classes, and then run an adult class where all the guys are expecting you to roll, you know, full out. I mean, people really don't get it. There's guys that own academies that come to me and they're like, man, just people don't really get it. You're doing an awesome job. You know, don't let anybody say anything else. That, you know, like, you don't really know until you know, you know.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I was literally just thinking about, like, someone asked me, like, how many classes do you teach in a week? And I'm like, oh. And I started counting. I was like, I think I'm like somewhere between 22 to 23 classes a week that I can teach. And like my fullest day will have like, oh wait, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My fullest day will have like 6 classes in one day, right? So
That's a lot.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and that's not counting like I'll teach at different locations too on certain other days. So like I don't have, like, obviously there's not much traffic in this area, but still like having to switch gears from one location to another, right? The dynamic in one academy is definitely going to be different from the dynamic in another to another, even though they're all linked to each other.
Mhm.
Class sizes, and then even the content. Like, I don't think people realize too, like, we can't just teach whatever the heck that we want on whatever day. Like, we have to have lessons plans, we have to have curriculums. Students need to be able to follow along where you are within the lesson plan of that week or that curriculum. I can't just show up and like, oh, I decided that we're going to do this today. And then the next time I show up, we're like, okay, now we're going to do something really random that has nothing to do with what we last time that we saw each other, and nothing
Right.
to do, you know, like there's no, like we really have to think about like how we do that. And then also if there's overlap between students who may do maybe a double day, or maybe they come to one class on one day and then they come into another class that is either on the same lesson plan or a different lesson plan. It's like, man, you feel bad because you don't want them. I mean, obviously there's no harm in relearning the same lesson plan, but you never know. Like, again, it's easy to overthink that, like, oh, well, they don't want to see the same stuff. They want to see something new. And like having to stick to your guns for the lesson plan of the day. Again, just trying to make everybody happy, or make it so that it can be productive for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you get the overlap too. Like you can plan out perfectly curriculum, and we're doing this week, which leads into this the following week. And then you get a guy who hasn't come in 2 weeks, and now he's not following the progression, or he missed the week before. That is what led up to what we're doing now. There's so many different dynamics in each different academy. It's really an amazing thing, and it's a whole topic within itself. But I think, in everybody's mind, like when I watched that one video of yours, it was like, wow, there's somebody that gets it, like it's just, there's so many, everybody has an opinion, it could eat you alive as an academy owner and professor and coach sometimes, but you gotta have that outside perspective, so that was really something cool to see. Now, when you started teaching, did you have a curriculum to go on, or did you just get in there and just get your mat time teaching to learn how to teach and what to teach?
So when I first started teaching, it was the kids, and I definitely did have like a loose lesson plan as far as like, okay, these are the positions that we want to go through, and then we're just going to make sure that we progress from one to the other. And then and with the kids, again, it's like a lot of times it's like getting them to at least just being able to engage, get them to play, get them to move, get them to overcome fears of like rolling over their rolling upside down or going backwards, or even just breaking their fear of falling, and then eventually it started developing a little bit more, because during that time when I was under Professor Gustavo Dantas, like he was already like putting together like an actual like curriculum. Like he had always had it in his mind, but then like putting it down on paper, and that made it a little bit easier for me to follow, as far as like, okay, these are things that I can do. And it wasn't strict though. It was like I didn't have to teach it a very, very specific way. It was just like, okay, make sure that they know how to do an armbar, make sure they know how to do XYZ, but I could teach it however way I wanted. Now, fast forward, and then now going back to California, and now I'm a brown belt. I'm under Professor Kayo again, and he 100% has a curriculum, and everything in that lesson plan, everything in that curriculum has to be taught a very, very specific kind of way. This is actually how I was tested for my black belt, was that you have to know the fundamentals curriculum, and that's what you be tested on. And you can't teach it differently than how he teaches it. You have to teach it exactly as Professor Kayo teaches his fundamentals program, because there has to be, that means wherever, if I ever have to teach class at HQ, or if I teach at an affiliate or whatever, it's consistent, right? And there's no changes, there's no ebbs. So that was definitely a lot stricter than from when I was a purple belt or even a beginner brown belt in Arizona to a later more seasoned brown belt, and even going and testing to be a black belt, and then being a black belt and teaching as a black belt with a very, very strict curriculum and very, very strict lesson plans. So, but nowadays I have my own curriculum and my own lesson plan, which draws a lot of inspiration and draws a lot of guidance from Professor Kayo and Professor Gustavo. So, so I feel like I had really, really good. I have really good professors, and I had really good mentors and really good influences when it comes to that.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. There's also a big point where some people, there's always balance. I think the big picture is balance. You can have it fully written out curriculum and you can follow that, but what it comes down to is guidelines, like, and like you said, you're doing a mix of those two, and your own experience, which is what it's supposed to be. You have to have, the structure in the beginning and enough training on your own to know what to do and how to show things. And then you get different tips and techniques from other people on how they teach, but they got there because they put the mat time in and came up with their own ideas and put that in. So like it's a whole process, but there's got to be a lot of give and take in that process. Otherwise,
Yeah.
people are going to get turned away from coaching and teaching. That's why I think a lot of people don't wind up doing it, because sometimes it's too structured and no, you only have to do this and show this, or no, you only have to show the moves that I show. But there's got to be a give and take, and it sounds like that's exactly what you are doing and what you experience. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I again, like I have really like both Professor Gustavo and Professor Kaya have like really good like how they teach. It's like, that we give you these guidelines, like, but they had never stifled creativity at all, right? Like they're always like, there's so many ways that we can get to an answer, right? Like, or if, like thinking like a math equation, right? If the answer is 100, there's so many different ways that we can get to 100. It's like, but we have to know the fundamental way of getting there first, right? So like, let's learn our addition and subtraction first, and then we can add in division, then we can add in multiplication or whatever, right? And so I believe they really gave me a really good backbone of like, one, understanding technique, and then when you're teaching technique, it's like you can't. If you're someone who understands things naturally, like you can look at it and like, oh, I got it. But not everybody learns that way. So having to understand the different learning styles, understanding too that, okay, maybe you had in mind for one day's lesson plan that you were going to go over 3 different things, but everyone's super beginner or everyone's really struggling. Like, definitely, I'm not going to force that third thing. I'm just going to cut that off, and we're just going to stop at 1 and 2. Or sometimes we can get through all 3 very easily. Like, great, this is awesome. So now everyone's on the same page. Or if they get through it so easily that maybe I can add in one more thing, then like, okay, here's like a bonus that's a little bit more of an intermediate or advanced approach to this fundamental or basic, problem, whatever. It's nice to be able to have a read, or I guess a closer relationship with your students, so where you can actually work with them enough where you can kind of see like, all right, they're getting it or they're not getting it. They're struggling. Okay, a majority of their classes is getting it. A couple people might need a little bit more work. That's okay, right? And then making sure that we are, again, always going back and scaling back, like, okay, is it the majority of everybody getting it or not getting it? Okay, what changes do I need to do? How can I adjust? And how can we make this easier to digest? Because I can't just, well, screw it. You just learn it, and then you'll just figure it out eventually. I've never been that kind of instructor. But at the same time, it's like, I want to make sure that everyone's kind of moving in a way so that they see that progress.
That's awesome, because this is a really great topic, that we don't delve into a lot, which I think is a huge thing that people don't understand, is the process of coaching, teaching, either owning an academy, like things like that. And it's so, there's really no general standards when it comes to, there's a lot of general standards when it comes to what the fundamentals are, but there's no general standards because everybody's got their own opinions. Everybody's got different lineages, that believe in certain ways of moves and teaching, that, it's very hard to see best practices in the industry unless we're doing things like this and seeing what other people are doing out there, because also a lot of people hold that close. It's very like proprietary, the way people coach and teach and show their students how to teach. They don't want that getting out either. So it's a whole undiscovered topic that I'm really glad to talk about today.
Yeah, well, I really feel like I feel like nowadays there's more sharing of information, and like there's less taboo of like, oh, we don't show our stuff, like you have to hide it, right? And it's like no one's gonna find out. Like YouTube was the first game changer, right? You had YouTube, and then once YouTube became available, everyone's like, wow, I can see it. And then you started having people making like tutorials, right, and instructionals, and then putting those out, and then now you have whole businesses that are dedicated to that. Now you have live streaming, like you got Flow, you have like information is so accessible these days, and nothing is a secret anymore. And honestly, I feel like that hiding of information has I think stunts growth more than anything. It does not encourage growth. More than anything, it's like, if for as long as there's a sharing, like, okay, I see what you're doing, you see what I'm doing, that's fine. Because if you see what I'm doing, let's say that you're studying me technique wise, right? Or I'm your opponent. And you're like, I'm going to study you on YouTube, or I'm going to study you on Flow Grappling. fine, go ahead, do it. I'm not, no one's hiding anything. And if you figure out something that I'm doing, great. That means I'm going to have to do something to up that, right? Like I'm gonna have to, you're countering my move. Now I have to counter your counter and counter.
Yeah, the
counter.
rising tide will raise all ships. That same
Right.
It advances the sport. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
I mean,
yeah.
I say that all the time. It's like everybody, there's no secrets in jiu-jitsu anymore. Maybe back in the day, people hiding it. I actually still hear it a lot sometimes. Oh, don't show them that. It's not. You didn't come up with our lineage, and I'm like, come on, there's no secrets anymore.
Yeah.
So it's still a tough thing. Sometimes you see it a lot still.
Yeah, everyone's gonna figure it out eventually. And the thing is like, okay, the difference now is like, are they gonna learn it? I don't say the right or wrong way, but are they gonna just learn it and figure out a way that's like, right? And maybe they get hurt, or maybe you could just teach it, or you could just learn it, or whatever, or offer some tips of how to make it work. And then now, with that combined effort, now there's gonna be a better version of that now, right? That's now available, right? It's again, things can only grow when it's shared. If it's just stifled and kept down, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I'm glad that is now more commonly accepted. It's like cross training between gyms, open mats. It's still, you can still hear stories of places like, oh, we're not allowed to train there, or we don't support this event because of that. I'm like, dude, there's no room for it. There's no room. Like if you want to grow, then you need to squash that. If you don't want to grow, cool. Yeah. Stay in your little bubble here. They stay in their bubble and nothing grows, or you stay in your bubble and they're sharing with each other and you're outside of it and everyone else is growing around you and you're stuck in one place. So, so I it's crazy when you hear that still happens. But I'm glad that's becoming less and less taboo, less and less like, oh, you're being a crayonchi, you're a traitor, like, dude, that doesn't exist anymore. Like anyone can learn and train with anyone, really. It's like, you know where your flag is at the end of the day, right? Just because you train somewhere else for like an open mat, or you want to train with other people because, hey, like let's be honest, most of us are really, really socially awkward, and jiu-jitsu is the only way that we're gonna socialize. I could be overgeneralizing. I could just be speaking about me and hoping other people are like me.
No.
But yeah, like a lot of us, we need jiu-jitsu to like make friends. It's hard making friends as an adult, and so this is like the only acceptable way as an adult. With pajamas and choking people, it's fine.
That's right.
It's normal. Completely upset.
It's completely normal.
So what do you got now? You've been competing a lot. Even at black belt. You've competed a lot of black belts, world level. What was the last time you competed, and what do you have coming up? Anything specifically?
Well, as of right now, I don't have anything coming up because I have been 100% focusing on my students. I think I competed the first time like in the beginning of May. And the last time I competed before that was like PANS last year. And so like it was a really long time since I competed, because it's just like once I moved out here, again, like the access to training partners, and my focus completely shifted and changed. I went from, when I was in California, I could train, 2 to 3 times a day, 5 to 6 days a week if I wanted to. And here, I'm lucky if I get to train anywhere up to 3 times a week, if I can, right? I'm lucky if I get one sometimes, because again, depending on which students come in, if I have students that I can train harder with, like realistically train with to get ready for like an international or world level tournament,
big
right?
Events,
and because those are the tournaments I don't say I can only do, but my best chances for finding opponents are only going to be really at like PANS, Master Worlds, right? Like the majors. I'm not going to find opponents really at local level tournaments, but I could still try. So, I'm not, honestly, I'm not retired from competition because I still love competing and I want to compete. So I don't have anything planned. But if there's something that I can do, if there's a super fight or something along the way, and I feel like I can train realistically for it, then I'll do it. But I've already done everything that needs to be done for myself. I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but like I have a pretty good resume. I feel like I have a competition resume I can feel proud of. I've done everything that I've wanted to do outside of maybe doing, I would like to do a black belt masters Grand Slam. As far as like, I'd love to be able to compete and win Masters, Worlds, Pans, Europeans and Brasileiros, you know, in one season. But that's going to be incredibly hard to do with my responsibilities now. But it's not going to be out because it's a great thing about jiu-jitsu, and even being like, I qualify for Masters 2 now. Even with that, like, you can still compete at any time. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any other sport that you can do competitively that's like that. Like, if in the same sport as a child or as an adult, that you can compete at literally whatever age and whatever level, and you can still compete at a high level too. You know, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, 21 or if you're 51, right? So jiu-jitsu is great in that aspect. So competition is never going to be out of the question, or you know, and it's never going to not be an option.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, you have done so much in the sport already, and it's awesome. It's cool to see that you are, you know, transitioning into the coach and professor. You know, a lot of people, you know, they can't cross that barrier, or they have difficulty doing it. You know, it's either one or the other. So I really think it's it shows a lot that, you know, to be able to compete at the highest level and coach and teach at the highest level as well. And it's cool. So anybody out there, if you guys aren't already, give her a follow. It's going to be at KB Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram. A lot of really cool content on there. And yeah, I mean, other than that, so where can people catch you? In Florida, you said?
Yep, I'm in the Panhandle. So the little town I'm in is Pace. So I'm teaching out of Pace Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and then they have like 2 other locations in Milton and Bruton. Bruton's in Alabama. So that's like, so if you're ever in the Pensacola area, I will say the beaches here are amazing, absolutely amazing. White sands, like just blue water. They call it, was it the Emerald Bay or something like that. It's beautiful. Like I did not expect the beach to be as beautiful as it was when I got here. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's only like 30 minutes away from where I live. Awesome. I'm going to be here every single weekend. So if you ever want to get some like good chill jiu-jitsu, but you also want to like go to the beach and just have like a chill weekend, or just chill however long you want to stay, come and see me. I'll show you around. It's relaxed out here.
That's awesome.
Well, we appreciate the time, Kristina. Hang around after the podcast. We'll chat some more. Guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe, give her a follow, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.